Okay, Dave is poised, ready to go with this week's Talking Points. There's the list for you. And first on the agenda is the champion flat jockey, Ashen Murphy, who is in a deal of trouble. He has relinquished his flat jockey's licence, though, Dave.
He has, and he's obviously facing more BHA charges around a failed alcohol test at Chester in May and riding when he shouldn't have been around quarantine. We know Ocean, he's an ambassador at Sporting Life, he's one of our columnists, and you won't be surprised to know, Rishi, he's an absolute joy to deal with. He goes above and beyond. His columns are fantastic, his AV work, his videos, his insight, the prep that goes in. He's got an opinion on everything. You ask him about he's riding the Derby and he goes through the Derby field, he's got everything mapped out and he knows everything that's going on, but clearly there are issues in his life that need addressing, and I'm so pleased that they're now being addressed. And when you're facing the sort of challenges that Ocean is, they're addressed in private. This is how people need to address them. Move away from the spotlight, deal with what you need to deal with, and hopefully come back when you've served whatever suspension is, when you're ready to come back, because fundamentally for everything that Ashen Murphy is, he's a wonderful jockey. And he will be missed, but it's far, far more important that he gets these issues sorted now. There's
a great deal of uncertainty as to what's to come for him, because we don't know how the BHA and he are going to handle the punishments that are coming his way. There's potential between 3 to 4 months on the sideline, and whether or not it can be backdated, and whether or not, whilst he's relinquished his flat jockey's licence, whether or not that would count in the backdating. So it's possibly going to affect what happens to Ashen Murphy significantly in 2022.
I would have thought it significantly impact his 2022, yeah. Regardless whether Ocean would even want it backdated and even want to be coming back at the sort of time that potentially would be the earliest opportunity. Qatar Racing have offered his support. He's surrounded by really good people at Andrew Balding's yard as well. He's got good people around him, and this is the time for Ocean. This is the line in the sand moment. He knows that, he's realised that. It's time to get these things sorted. I'm convinced he will. And I'm convinced he'll be able to come back and take up his career again, which he's just a phenomenal jockey. Yeah,
we certainly wish him the very best, but as you said, there's a lot to be sorted from that situation. Still a bit of uncertainty about how it all happens with the BHA and the disciplinary team. OK, so that's Ashen Murphy. Next on the list is Tom Dascombe, splitting up with Michael Owen and Manor House Stables. It's seemingly two different sides of the story. An amicable split, according to Michael Owen. Tom Dascombe saying it's come as a shock to him.
Yeah, that was a sort of shock follow-up, wasn't it? Michael posted his statement on Twitter that he wouldn't be with him next year and thanked him for his service. They remained friends, and then Tom trained a winner at Suddleford, John Dance, that day, and said he'd only found out 48 hours ago and didn't know what the future would hold, other than he would stay in the training ranks somehow. And it just seems very strange, and because it was such a strong partnership, such a seemingly from the outside anyway, formidable partnership, especially in the North and Northwest Racing. They, with Richard Kingscote, of course, central to it, he left earlier in the year, or they lost first call on him with moving to Sir Michael. But it did seem, A, as a shock that they were splitting up, and then B, Tom's reaction was at odds of what Michael said. And for Tom now to be setting up in this current climate, to be going solo and setting out, it ain't going to be easy. The yearling sales have been and gone. If he didn't know it was coming and hasn't been stocking up, will owners follow him wherever he's setting up? There's talk potentially of him moving to Lambourne. And also there are a lot of other trainers right now, the trainers who train for Shadwell, for instance, who are getting reduced numbers in, and there's a clamour for horses and people desperately out there. It's a really competitive marketplace for the trainers.
It is. It's the situation where we only see, as you touched on at the start of the synopsis, that we see the outside, we think everything's fine. They did look to have a very strong bond between them, but you can never be certain what's going on. And I know Michael Owen has said that they remain great friends, but again, the interpretation of what's gone on is that perhaps the communication hasn't entirely been obvious.
I mean, that's the only conclusion you can come to from the two statements from Michael and from Tom. And he was a salaried employee, clearly, at the yard, and now he's going to have to go out and set up on his own. I must admit, there's been one or two whispers around the circuit, but I didn't see this one coming, and particularly in the style that it did either.
Well, challenging times for Tom Dascombe, indeed. Challenging times as well for the sport, because there is the possibility of lockdown coming our way for the nation, and of course that will have a significant impact on whatever industry you work in. But for the sport of horse racing, Dave, what do you think the near future holds?
Yeah, the right newspapers, in quotes, who tend to get the government leaks, if you can believe such things exist, are now predicting the 2-week circuit breaker lockdown, and it depends when it lands very much for racing. What it would mean, the one thing that we have got, thanks to the BHA and the protocol that they put in place throughout the COVID lockdowns, we have got a proven track record for getting it right, for keeping the show on the road in the best way that we can. We have to hope that it does enable at least some people to be on the racecourse when racing does continue, and that it is a shortened period. I know we're going to come on to prize money later on in the talking points, but there are all sorts of implications when racing goes behind closed doors in terms of income streams, finances, and again, that people's touch point with the sport. People have just got used to being racing again. The end of July, we were able to get going again. We had Goodwood, we had York through the autumn. People had Cheltenham in November, and all the excitement of the spring's just around the corner. And now we're looking potentially at a 2-week circuit breaking lockdown. And
what's the feeling as to when that's coming?
The feeling seems to be before New Year. It looks as if it keeps moving closer to Christmas. Now, I don't think they would dare go Christmas politically, the government.
Boxing Day?
But I think Boxing Day will be okay. I mean, I don't work for Sage or for I hotline to Boris either. But
if you did, you wouldn't really tell us.
No, I wouldn't tell you. I wouldn't be allowed to. You know that, Rishi. But yeah, you do get the impression it is coming. The numbers that are going around with the cases and the scientific advice that's coming in, the one thing that I think we can trust now is the BHA are going to have it right, the protocols in place, the RCA, the governing bodies to respond accordingly and keep the show on the road. Just
as an individual, families, etc., are you worried by what's coming?
You do worry, don't you? You do worry when the case number's rising. I've got a young family. We're working from home. Our office is closed. Things that we're being impacted now.
Yeah, I think that sums up the way a lot of people are feeling at the moment. The next topic is a rather unsavoury one, and it involves Jorge Navarro in the States, who received a 5-year prison sentence, restitution of up to 25 million, is that right? Yeah. And he's obviously got his, I think, 70,000 fees to go back. A pretty nasty thing. It's a horrible story, isn't it? And you think about the challenges that racing faces over here, and there are obviously plenty of them. In America, the public perception of the sport is such a problem, such a major thing to try to improve. And here we have a high-profile trainer giving the maximum possible prison sentence for orchestrating a sort of campaign of giving horses performance-enhancing drugs. And there were wiretaps, and some of the things that came through on the wiretaps about boasting about giving these substances to horses, about what he'd given to them. There were WhatsApps. It was the sort of thing you expect to read in a fiction novel. And here it is, a really high-profile American trainer. Now, you've seen the reaction for other Grey Motion, for example, who was fantastic on Twitter, had responded by saying there's no, you've disgraced the sport and you're paying the price now. And you are, but you just worry about racing in America right now, the issues that there've been and the drugs and the medication and the horse welfare that there is over there. This story must have, I mean, we don't get the American press, it must have been front and back page news, mustn't it? Well, you think the situation in America in the last 12 months with, you know, Madonna Spirit, Jorge Navarro, Jason Service still waiting on a verdict. I mean, they've taken a lot of heavy punches this year. I know we talk about it here, but over there, it must be on the ropes. You know, the perception of how the nation views it. It must be so hard to get the message across that we're clean as well, isn't it? Because there's different records, different rules state by state. And I mean, we had the Breeders' Cup run this year with no medication. And it's obviously the way that they're going to have to go. You can't keep... We can't keep seeing cases like this cropping up, even on this side of the Atlantic. It looks terrible for the sport. In Britain as well, it doesn't happen over here. There's no evidence of it at a sort of sustained period. And it's just a really, really bad news story for racing, full stop, this one. It is awful. The case of Jorge Navarro, a 5-year prison sentence, as said, restitution of the $25 million. Another worrying story that emerged this week involves trainer Jo Davis, who has spoken about her experiences of sexism and harassment, etc., within the sport of horse racing. No specific accusations, but talking about her experiences, which were on the front page of the trade paper. What were your thoughts on what you saw? It was a really harrowing read, wasn't it? A blog that Jo put up about her experiences as a young jockey, but primarily then as a trainer, and an owner offering to send her horses for sex and trying to force his way into the house, an ex-owner, and then the stories about being flirted with the jockey at the parade ring, and sort of foul things shouted across rooms by a member of the media and a trainer. She made the point that the vast majority of trainers were absolutely fantastic to deal with. These were isolated incidents, but there were 4 or 5 of them. And I thought what was really telling was when she spoke about when she was in her 20s,
she's from a tough family and she'd have taken things more in a stride, but she's now thinking of the perspective of a parent, as a mother. And what does she want to bring up children and her daughter to be potentially working in industry where these things have taken place? I thought it was a really brave, a really powerful piece, and it deserved the coverage it got.
And that's a really interesting point you make about changing your perception. A lot of people, when they're coming up through the ranks, they're young, independent. Being tough is fine because you can control yourself, or you can bury whatever emotions. But as you get older and you start caring about other people more important than yourself, you suddenly start thinking, I wouldn't want someone that I love to go through that, and I don't want them to have to hide it. And that changes your perception entirely of the same experiences that you once didn't have a problem with.
And I think that goes for us all as well, doesn't it? And that's what I thought was so powerful about Joe's piece, that the final elements of it from the parents' perspective, that this is what I dealt with. I shouldn't have had to deal with it, and now I'm seeing it through the potential eyes of my children entering this sport. I don't want it for them, and I thought that was so powerful.
And Dina, when a lot of people talk about making things better, it's not just making things better for the sake of it, it's making things better for the next generation to come, who are people who are going to walk in our shoes in years to come, and hopefully not have to endure what some people have done. Better news for the sport in terms of prize money. The 15 Jockey Club racecourses have announced £58 million in prize money. Ascot, a significant, I think, 15 million in prize money next year. Yeah,
it was good news, wasn't it? And it was sustained, as you say. It was from the Jockey Club racecourses. It was from Ascot. There's a boost around the Kempton fixtures as well that was announced, and it felt like a significant move in the right direction. Now, admittedly, there's spins on these things. It's where does the prize money go? Is it going in at the bottom level to show up the more, should we say, lower funded prize money, or is it going to make the elite events even richer to try to attract the bigger horses? They're all the debates that are to take place. But it did strike me that in the same way that this news came out, the potential lockdown returned, and clearly the racecourses invest in prize money when they've got the confidence that their income streams are in place. And
which is fair enough, you can understand that.
Completely fair. You look at a place like York, who we deal with closely through work. William and the team there do a remarkable job, but so much of their income comes to people paying on the gate through the weddings that they have, their corporate hospitality. All these things need to be in place for them to make firm financial predictions and firm commitments to the sport. So, yeah, wonderful news. Prize money is clearly an issue, and a major issue, and this doesn't make it go away.
No.
These are welcome steps in the right direction, but they're not the solution to the overriding problem.
And that's what it felt like. You know, great news, and we are all really happy, but in the overall picture of the situation and the health of racing financially in this country, it is a relative drop in the ocean, one to be appreciated, but there's still so much to be done, still so much to do. I mean, when it comes to prize money in this country, you know, every person I've ever had sitting in that chair, or indeed talking about it, from who is a competitor, they all talk about the issue. I mean, it's so well documented.
And it goes hand in hand with the fixture list as well, doesn't it? Because we know we're not going to suddenly find billions coming in from elsewhere. We need to deal with what we've got, and all the debates around the fixture list and the tweaks that have been announced for 2022 now. And then last time we were on here, we were discussing. I'm sure somebody will be discussing it again in the spring. But the two things do go hand in hand, definitely.
I still think maybe just a reduction in fixtures
definitely
will help prize money.
It's got to do. Yeah. Basic economics, isn't it?
Well, without sounding like I know more than anybody else, I definitely don't. But it sounds like a fairly simple equation. Yeah. Maybe it's not so simple. Someone could explain it to me, because I'm not that clever. Silver Streak, such sad news. Suffered a fatal injury just doing a routine canter at home this week. Yeah,
your heart goes out to Evan Williams, his owners and the team, doesn't it? Such a wonderful horse. And the thing with Silver Streak was he had his final salve in last year's Christmas hurdle, and he was heading back to Kempton to defend his crown. But he was just the sort of horse that this sport needs. He was distinct, lovely looking grey horse, very distinctive to look at. But he turned up for all the big hurdles through the season. You could rely on Silver Streak being there. When we were scrambling around for 3 or 4 runners in these races, he'd be one of them. Yeah. He'd be capable of winning them as well, but he'd be there. He was campaigned right. He loved his racing. Very talented, and a horse who really struck a chord with the public. And for Evan and the team to lose him at home in the way he did must have been absolutely heartbreaking.
Extraordinary week, or couple of weeks for them, because they lost Stargate, who was a pretty talented horse for them. Obviously then they had the winner at Cheltenham with Cool Cody, then horrible story with Silver Streak, and then they won with Ansam yesterday. it just tells you to keep your feet on the floor. There's always something around the corner that you just don't expect.
It's so true, isn't it? And Willie Mullin said in his column on our side that he went out to Nicky Henderson around the injury to Buzz, but he said that they know it happens, that he's preparing his team for Christmas in Cheltenham. They know there are going to be setbacks, not the sort, fingers crossed, that have struck Evan and the team. It's swings and roundabouts, highs and lows. We keep getting told about. I really don't know how resilient the trainers and the staff must be to deal with them, because we're on the outside looking in, and you fall in love with Silver Streak. You've got the passion for him, the admiration, and we'll miss him. We'll miss seeing him in the Christmas hurdle in these big races. We've got those wonderful memories. But what it must be like for those who are with them every morning, every evening fee, every evening stables, and it's been such a big part in their careers, hasn't he? And Adam Wedge as well. He was such a big part in his career, and it's so sad, so sad.
Well, I had the privilege of interviewing Evan yesterday at Ascot after Ansam won, and he was talking about Ansam, had a sort of regretful smile on his face almost, because the sadness of Silver Streak is still so raw, understandably. And he finished off the interview by saying, he's up there looking down on us. We had a bit of help today. Always very emotional. But you do feel that the yard have really been hit hard by it. But hopefully better days around the corner, and we send them all our deepest condolences. Dave, thank you very much, because that has been this week's Talking Points.
Subscribe to Racing TV to be notified when more Luck on Sunday videos are appearing online. And don't forget to join me for the show every Sunday morning from 9 o'clock with the best guests.